Hey guys and girls, Port now back with you for another horror movie review, and on this video I will be reviewing Black Christmas, the remake from 2006. I hesitated there because there's now been a couple of remakes, although the most recent film, which came out this week, is sort of more of a reimagining. It's trying to update the original film at least and doing something a bit different, or trying to. But I'll get to that film when I get to that film, which will be soon. Saw it yesterday, but now on this video I'm going to talk about the original, the first remake of Black Christmas, which came out in 2006. Glen Morgan directs. I think he's best known for his work on the X-Files, certainly before this film. You have a, I guess, fairly notable cast. Michelle Trachtenberg's in there. She played Dawn on Buffy. And this is actually just a few years after the final season of Buffy. So I think at the time she was quite a sort of a sought after sort of actress, so she gets quite high billing. You have Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who at the time was an unknown, but now actually is quite well known, very well known in many ways, been in a lot of films. Also was in the last season of Fargo. So she really has gone on to have a pretty good career. And you also have Katie Cassidy, who people know from certain things as well. Andrea Martin makes a cameo as well. She was in the original Black Christmas. So that's kind of one of those like cute little sort of tie-ins. One thing that isn't great is actually Mary Elizabeth's Winston's accent. Her southern accent is really all over the place. That's one thing I'll say. But it's the same setup basically as the original 70s film. They've just changed it a little, so you get more of Billy's backstory. So it sort of starts with him in like an insane asylum at Christmas. Many years ago, he was locked up because of him basically slaughtering his family, and we get that backstory told by the sorority house like mother, played by Andrea Martin. And we find out his whole backstory. But then on Christmas Eve, of course, or Christmas, whichever one it is, I think Christmas Eve, he finds a way to finally break out, and he sort of returns home basically because we find out in a development that it's the house he grew up in, the sorority house of the setting, and he starts picking them off. And before I get on to some more spoilers, it's really not very good, this remake. It's very bland and generic, extremely predictable. The kills, there's one or two good kills, but mostly they're pretty forgettable kills. None of the characters really stand out, although it's a decent cast who sort of do their best. Certainly Michelle Trachtenberg, I think you can see, is giving it a good go. Katie Cassidy is pretty watchable, but they're just not really given anything to work with. They're very cardboard cut out, very generic. Again, they all sort of feel the same in many ways. It's not like, I mean, in the original Black Christmas, I wouldn't say the characters were like great characters, but they at least had distinct personalities. They at least stood out a bit. They felt quite diverse to each other, and they were given more to do. These just feel like these kind of one note sort of bitchy like sorority girls. So extremely bland, extremely one note. And I can't say too much bad about the film in a way, it's just very forgettable. And I think one notable thing about it is it just fits into this mold of modern slasher remakes where it's just trying way too hard to be shocking or edgy or just trying to like throw so much at the screen and hoping it'll stick. And every now and again something half decent might just come off because those are like the law of averages. But it just goes way too heavy on the whole, like just being twisted and, kind of for the sake of it and playing with the whole Christmas theme and just throwing all this backstory at you, whereas it just lacks the heart of the original. It lacks the like mystery of the original and the atmosphere. So it throws too much at you. It kind of loses its direction, if you like. Nothing really stands out. And nothing really adds up in the film because you get the scenes at the insane asylum on Christmas. I mean, you have this stereotype of like a sort of a kinky Father Christmas visiting, which is pretty lame. And they sort of say, I mean, there's some really bad dialogue in the film. This ain't no place for Santa Claus, not on Christmas, he says. And it's really weird because the guards know the whole history about Billy and they start discussing it. And they actually sort of play along, which is just really like morbid and weird and doesn't really make sense because they give him like chicken, one of the guards, when they're taking like the food around for the inmates, they just give him like chicken, and there's this line about because that's the closest thing to how his mother tasted, and you just think, well, what? Why would you play along with it? Why would you go along with like this sort of sick game Billy wants to play? I mean, he's this really disturbed sort of crazed killer, and none of it really rings true or plays that believable. And the whole backstory with Billy is a big problem because you get like this very much similar sort of vibe to like Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, where they just have to crowbar in this backstory. And again, it takes all the mystery out of it. It takes the threat away from Billy. It just sidetracks the whole plot because it sort of makes it more about him and it over explains him, whereas in the original you get so little of the killer outside of the kills, that it makes it more suspenseful and more interesting, and there's a mystery. There's no mystery to this because from the start this guy has escaped from a mental institution. He's going to kill these girls. You know who he is. You get the whole backstory, and the whole backstory is like just really clunky. So you get it told. First of all, the Andrew and Martin character starts telling them, and there's this really weird beat actually where they're playing like Secret Santa, and they kind of like her character insists and they have a present for Billy, like as in the serial killer, as in they all know legend. So it's this kind of weird sort of idea to ward off like evil spirits or something like that on Christmas. It's just so convoluted and sort of makes no sense, and you're not sure whether it's meant to be like this sort of black sort of comedy where they're being quite ironic about it, having this sick sense of humour, or whether it's just it just is what it is. You're really not sure how to read all this. And the problem is that it's not really sold. It never seems to really freak the cows out particularly. You would think they would really be disturbed by the whole notion. And then they find out the house they're in, coincidentally, is the house Billy was brought up in, which is why he's gone back to reclaim it almost. Him and his sister, as it turns out. So that's another sort of convenient, and that's just an example of this film trying too hard, just forcing these things together rather than just going for a more focused sort of plot, this sort of basic sort of plot, and just putting all the effort into the atmosphere and the kills and characters and stuff. So it's really, really lame. But once they find out then they're in Billy's house, or the house he grew up in. That's not really sold. There's no sort of fallout from that at all. But as I said, the backstory in the flashback, it's all so unnecessary. It all distracts from the story. Billy was brought up in an abusive house. He sees his father killed off by his mother and her new lover. And then there's this whole weird sort of storyline where Billy actually has sex with his mother. So, when there's a new baby introduced, Billy is like the sort of brother and the father at the same time. It's like, what the fuck is going on in this film? And it's just, again, this extra sort of level they're trying to crank the perversion up to, and it just serves no real purpose. So that, there's a couple of decent moments in that. I do quite enjoy Billy, with the cookie cutter into the flesh of his mother, and making the flesh sort of like cookies, if you like. That's quite a nice little visual moment, quite sick and twisted, but highlights, and it sort of smashes into her lover's head with like a Christmas ornament. So stuff like that, a couple of moments like that are quite sort of entertaining and have something to them, but they're very few and far between. The phone calls in this film, the kind of the perverse phone calls, there's just nothing to them because they're just Billy like playing the tape of him growing up. And they're not like the original film where there was this sense of mystery where, I don't know, there was just more of a threat, just more of a mystique behind them, and it put you sort of on edge. Again, I think the main problem with the film is that it just leaves nothing to the imagination. The kills are mostly weak, and there's no real suspense or tension. And you sort of get all this forced extra drama with, like, for example, one of the first girls to get killed, Megan, I think her name was. Pretty sure it was Megan. She's kind of upstairs and miserable because she's watching, like, I don't know why she would be rewatching this, but as it turns out, she's had an affair, or she's been sleeping with like the boyfriend of one of the other girls, it was before he knew her apparently, but anyway, she feels guilty because she once had sex with him, and she's watching the video and is really miserable, and that sort of comes out. It's like the Katie Cassidy, her boyfriend, and the actor who plays him is really terrible. But that just cranks up and forces this drama, where, you really don't need particular drama in this sort of film. So that just detracts again. You get all these needless sort of ads on. You get like this extended scene at the end with in the hospital where they think they've sort of killed him, and Katie Cassidy is in the hospital. She's taken by like the sister of one of the other victims. Um, and then Billy and his sister sort of follows them, and you get this whole like foray at the end where she finally kills him. She sort of drops him like from the stairs, the top of the stairs, like through a Christmas tree. So again, deliberate, kind of Christmas imagery on that kill. So I mean, and she is quite feisty, the sort of Katie Cassidy character, and I think she kind of does a decent job with a very sort of thinly written type of role. But yeah, again, it's always cranking things up. It's very in your face, and it's just kind of boring. It just falls flat, really. There's no real standout characters. Very little standout moments. It's not awful. I've seen much worse than this, but it does feel very generic and just desperate, just pretty badly written overall. So I was left with a feeling of very nothing, of myrrh really. Luckily, it's quite a short film, so it passed the time quite easily. But yeah, pretty poor stuff. Black Christmas 2006. And I'll rate it, I'll give it a 4 out of 10. So there you have it. Pales in comparison to the original. Now, can Blumhouse do a much better job of updating the story? Because they have gone for one more of a reboot. So Black Christmas 2019 is out now. It came out this week and I saw it yesterday, and I will be reviewing it very soon on this channel. So find out my thoughts on it and let me know your thoughts on Black Christmas 2006 in the comments. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.